What if I told you everything you thought you knew about hair was wrong? I found a Reddit thread where the point of conversation was debunking hair myths, and I thought I would just weigh in as a hairstylist with over 10 years of experience in the industry. So without further ado, let's get into it. The original post was on the subreddit r/haircare. The post says, myths and the subreddit. Since we are here to largely share advice with each other, I think it's in everyone's best interest to have a baseline of what is fact and what is myth. Giving advice on or requesting advice on products for hair only, brands, masks, leave-ins, conditioners, treatments, dyes, etc. is something we can all use our anecdotal experiences for in discussion. However, when we get into trying to diagnose each other at the root, literally, of the issue, it can get higher stakes. Hair is connected to the scalp, and the scalp is skin. The scalp is no joke. Myths often seen in this sub. Washing the hair every day is generally bad. Quite the opposite. If we neglect to maintain our scalp hygiene, we can develop various scalp conditions and even lead to more hair fall due to not properly washing. So this is kind of true, kind of false. There's a variety of ways in which you could neglect your hair. If you're going as long as possible without washing your hair, that would be considered negligence. If you're just constantly adding more and more product to your hair between wash days, you're going to get buildup, which leads to clogged follicles, which can result in thinning and excess hair shedding. Not to mention your hair's just going to be stinky, which is gross. Going as long as possible without washing your hair, maybe going a little too long between wash days, can lead to greasy looking hair, greasy feeling hair. You can also get infections and other scalp issues due to unhealthy follicles, if there's any like scabbing, blistering, just icky, gross things happening. And if you are someone who struggles with thin, flat hair, inevitably it's just going to make your hair look flatter and thinner when you go longer between wash days. On the other end of the spectrum, overwashing is equally as bad for your hair. First off, you're stripping your hair of natural oils, especially if you're not using proper shampoos and conditioners. We'll get to that. Stripping these natural oils can lead to dry scalp, which can cause other scalp irritations, flaking, etc. If you have color treated hair, you're going to cause your color to fade faster, which is really just an expensive situation to put yourself in. If you are washing every single day when you really don't need to, it's just a waste of product. It's a waste of your hair color, and it's just not good. Also, your mids and ends will suffer because you're inevitably going to end up having to dry and style your hair more. If you're air drying, okay, sure, maybe it's not as bad, but still, your hair is super fragile when it's wet. And then if you're blow drying and heat styling every single day because you wash every single day, that's going to cause mechanical damage, which can be fixed with haircuts, but it's just like a whole other set of issues. My general rule of thumb for everyone is to try to stick to an every other day wash cycle. End of story. Now, there are outliers who do need the every single day wash. If you have very, very, very fine hair that gets greasy within a day, okay, maybe I'll give you a pass. If you go to the gym every day, I'll give you a pass as well. If you're getting very sweaty, like you don't want that sweat building up on your scalp over the course of so many days. So I will give you a pass as well on a more frequent wash cycle. However, I think most people can comfortably exist in a every other day wash cycle. My next rule of thumb is to be sure you're washing your scalp, all parts of your scalp. Your mids and ends will get clean when you're rinsing the shampoo out of your hair, but when you're scrubbing, you want to focus on your scalp. That is where the skin of your hair is. That's where your hair grows from. Focusing on that will remove not only the product that is collecting and building there, it's also going to be like a mild exfoliant, which we know from our face that that's important. Also, it's going to remove any excess dirt, sweat, oil, grime, whatever. Remember that shampoo is for your scalp and conditioners for your mids and ends. Throw in a scalp treatment as needed. A lot of people tend to need them in the winter months because we're running our heat, the air dryer, especially if you live in a colder climate. Just pay attention to your scalp and how it's feeling and looking, and if you need to incorporate a scalp treatment as needed, totally do that. And then, like I said, if you're exercising and sweating a lot, you're going to need a more frequent hair wash schedule. However, you can also get away with doing like a top wash, especially if you have bangs, just kind of washing this area, dry shampoo the back of your head, and then just do your full wash like later that day or the next day as needed. The next myth is sulfates and silicones are bad. No, some people don't like how sulfates and silicones feel or work on their own hair, but that does not make them harmful. Sulfate-free took off as is a marketing hot take, and many people have suffered as a result of it. Everyone is different. If you feel your hair is super oily and never feels clean, you are likely not a good candidate for trying sulfate-free shampoos. If your scalp is over-dried by sulfates and you find sulfate-free formulas are better for you, use sulfate-free formulas, but do not blanketly recommend someone go sulfate-free. So I strongly disagree with this. This portion is going to be a little bit longer than probably any of the other ones in this video because it's a little more in-depth and scientific. So let's get into it. When it comes to sulfates, there is a variety of different types of sulfates in products. Before we get into the discussion of like good sulfates and bad sulfates, let's just talk about what the hell is sulfates. We hear this word thrown around all the time: sulfate, sulfate-free, blah, 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 blah. What does that mean? To put it as simple as possible, sulfates are cleansing agents that break down oils and emulsify, which means basically that they like bubble up and make suds. Not all sulfates are created equal, and that is why sulfate-free formulas really took off. It's not just a marketing ploy. The sulfate-free industry wasn't created to just make you spend more money. Like I just said, not all sulfates are created equal. The main types of sulfates are sodium lauryl sulfate, sodium laureth sulfate, and ammonium lauryl sulfate. Sodium lauryl sulfate is the harshest sulfate formula, and this is commonly found in industrial cleaners. Think engine degreasers, car wash soap. It's a very harsh, very intense cleanser. So this is going to be like maximum stripping. This is the cleansing agent that is in a lot of mass-produced drugstore cleansers, which is why stylists will tend to say avoid drugstore shampoos. These are going to be the most stripping, the most drying, make your hair the most fragile. Not ideal. Sodium laureth sulfates, on the other hand, are a gentler alternative to SLS sulfates, and this is just through the way they're processed. Now, some cons to these gentler alternatives is that they do have aquatic ecotoxicity due to the processing, which basically just means they're like bad for ocean life. Also, they are known to be carcinogenic, while there are no known ties to them causing cancer, but it's just something to think about. And the last is that they are still a fairly harsh cleanser, even though they are a gentler option to their counterpart. And the last most common sulfate found in everyday products is ammonium lauryl sulfate, which is derived from lauryl alcohol and is effective at removing dirt and oil when mixing with alcohol. This is a super common ingredient in a lot of household cleansers, including rug and upholstery shampoos. So when we say sulfate free, we're not typically referring to the alternatives that I had mentioned that are all just different iterations of the same chemical compound. What we are referring to as stylists is actual alternative options that are not only gentle on the scalp, but replicate or mimic the hair's natural oil productions and flows. So a few alternatives are sodium cocoyl isethionate, which is a mild surfactant that's derived from coconut oil. I'm just going to pop these names up here because they're all kind of confusing. Cocoa mitoprotyl betaine, which is another coconut-derived surfactant that helps stabilize the lather. So basically just make sure that, you get that rich lather even though there's no sulfate in the product. Decylglucoside, which is a plant-derived non-ionic surfactant, which makes it really good for sensitive skin. Disodium laureth sulfiscucane. I don't know if I pronounced that correct, but that is a gentle surfactant that is commonly used in like baby shampoo. Sodium lauryl cicosinate, which is a gentle surfactant again, and this is the one that is commonly found in sulfate-free shampoos on the market. And the last one is a sodium methyl cocosyl taurate, which is a mild, rich cleanser and great for sensitive scalp. There's a lot of alternatives that are a lot better than the sulfate options. And I mean, if we're using sulfate-free alternatives in like baby cleansers, which we all know babies have like the most sensitive skin in the world, I don't really see what the issue is for adults to not also use these ingredients and what the turnoff is with that. Now, when it comes to silicones, this is where I really have a bone to pick. Silicones are polymers that make the hair slick and shiny. So think Pantene hair. The way your hair feels when you use Pantene, that is a silicone-based product. We all want shiny, smooth hair. That doesn't sound like a problem, right? Right. But the issue lies in the fact that most silicone-based products are actually just causing a buildup on the shaft, which then leads to this coating that is creating the illusion of healthy, shiny hair, but it's not actually making your hair healthy or shiny. Some alternatives to a silicone for a conditioning agent include include argan oil because it's rich in fatty acids and antioxidants. It hydrates and softens the mids and ends of the hair. Jojoba oil because it mimics your hair's natural oil production, which means it is super absorbent into the shaft, the scalp, everything, and will moisturize without making your hair greasy. Shea butter, this is a natural emollient, which basically just means it's going to smooth and soften the hair. Aloe, which is soothing for the scalp. As we all know, aloe is nature's Neosporin. It's also super hydrating. Bamboo extract, which has natural conditioning benefits as well as helping to strengthen the hair. When you think of bamboo, think of why it is such like a fascinating plant. It's because they grow forever and they're super strong. Daikon seed extract, which is just basically a plant-based silicone alternative. Avocado oil, which is vitamin rich, and the fatty acids hydrate and nourish the hair. And then olive oil, which moisturizes and strengthens the hair, which leads to improved elasticity and shine. Now, you know I'm not going to just like throw all this information out there and leave you high and dry. I wanted to share some options with you that are really great, budget-friendly, mid-tier, and luxury price point shampoos, cleansers that you should look at and reach for the next time you're at the store instead of grabbing that bottle of Suave or Pantene. So my budget-friendly options are going to be under $15. My mid-tier options are going to be like $20 to $30 price point, and then my luxury are going to be over $40 price points. So for budget-friendly options, I highly recommend the L'Oreal Everpure line. L'Oreal is a very common brand amongst the hair world. They have, high-end, low-end, salon-grade products. Definitely trust them. Of the drugstore options, anything in the L'Oreal Everpure collection is going to be really good bang for your buck and not super harsh. Another alternative budget-friendly option is the Kitsch shampoo bars. I hear a lot of amazing things about these. The ingredients are really good. The only learning curve is going to be getting used to using a bar, like a bar of soap on your hair as opposed to like a cream product. So that's the learning curve, but I hear amazing things about the products. I've never used them, but they have great reviews. Clients that use them love them, so always a cool option. My mid-tier price point suggestion would be like any of the Bondi Boost shampoos. Again, I've never used them, but I hear really great things. They look good. The ingredient list looks great. You can get them at like Sephora. And then my luxury price point would be anything from Oribe or honestly Mr. Smith. That's what I use at the salon and I love it. The ingredients are amazing. They smell good. They are a little more of a splurge product, but they literally last forever. Like the small bottles will last you a while. I have really thick hair, as you can tell, and I go through like the normal retail size bottles in like honestly probably like 2-3 months, give or take, and I wash my hair like 2 to 3 times a week. So yeah, let me know if you've used any of those products in the comments down below. The next myth is mainstream products have too many chemicals. Products are developed using science by cosmetic chemists. Being phobic against chemistry in the cosmetics industry ultimately boils down to pseudoscience. A perfect example, tea tree oil, natural, can burn someone's skin if not properly diluted. Tresemme shampoos cannot burn the skin even though they're in the middle of a lawsuit. I also encourage you to look into that lawsuit and the myths behind it. So this is true-ish. What I mean by that is everything's a chemical. Even water is a chemical. So I do get annoyed a little bit with the whole clean beauty buzzword because like chemicals aren't inherently bad. Not all chemicals are bad and not all chemicals are good. Just because something is natural doesn't mean it's good inherently, and just because something's natural doesn't mean it's bad inherently. A favorite example is poison ivy. Poison ivy is natural. However, would you go roll around in a vine of poison ivy or pick the leaf off and rub it all over your body? Probably not. The tea tree example mentioned here, that is true, although like a lot of very popular brands like Paul Mitchell, Kerastase, Kenra, Mr. Smith will use tea tree oil in their products, and there's not really any burning. Typically when those oils are added to the product, it's pretty late in the list. If you didn't know, when you read a product list, this even goes for your food, the higher up in the list something is, the more of that ingredient there is in the product, and then as it goes down the list, there's less and less. Typically essential oils of any kind are going to kind of fall in the middle tier or towards the end because in large quantities there can be adverse effects. It's just how it is. I am not sure what case that they are referring to in this. When I tried to research it, I couldn't really find a lot of information, but typically when there are lawsuits against products causing burning or hair loss or anything like that, typically there is like some root cause for it. And while yes, products are formulated by cosmetic chemists, things happen in the factories, and sometimes there's a bad batch of product, there's issues that don't get caught until after they already are sent out to stores, and stuff happens and it sucks. And I hope there is justice for people who were affected by it, and that's like a whole other rabbit hole we can fall down, but not in this video. But yeah, a lot of the time it's usually a scalp irritation or a hair loss issue, and typically it could be a number of things, whether it was deferred product, meaning it was like fake product repackaged into the packaging of whatever they thought they were buying, or it could be, you know, something was formulated incorrectly. Think of like the Jaclyn Hill scandal. There was quality issues, product went out, people were unhappy with it, and all the product got returned, refunded, or thrown away. Kind of the same concept. Like I said, we could go down a whole rabbit hole of lawsuits and that inner working of the hair world, but I simply just do not have time for that in this video. So the next myth is about hair training. Hair training will help with oil production. For the love of God, please do some research before perpetrating this myth. It could lead to serious scalp issues. We cannot control our oil production. We can only change how it appears or feels on our hair and skin. This is like kind of true, kind of false. Your oil production is primarily controlled by your genetics, your hormones, and certain environmental factors, not by your washing frequency. And if your hair does get oily quick, there are ways to prevent it or prolong it besides not washing your hair. My biggest tip for people who get oily like same day as they wash their hair is to just, like, as annoying as it is, give yourself the extra time and start blow drying your hair. And when I say blow dry your hair, I'm saying make sure you blow dry your hair and make sure your roots are 100% dry. By doing this, it's prolonging your oil production versus like your wet hair sitting on your head all day and then triggering a response to start producing oil to soothe. Also, using a dry shampoo or a dry texture spray or even a texturizing paste on your wash day, either before you blow dry your hair or after blow drying your hair, will help prolong the initial oil production for a little bit. So there are ways you can manipulate your hair to kind of push off the oil production, but like going longer without washing your hair isn't going to make it less oily, if that makes sense. The next myth: sulfate shampoos are harsher than other shampoos. Even if shampoo has two types of SLS, it can still be less harsh than shampoos that is marketed sulfate-free that replaces sulfates and alcohols with different forms of salt. This is just like factually not true. The myth being sulfate shampoos are harsher than other shampoos, that's not a myth. Like it's true. And then what they said about the alternatives on the market, that's incorrect. And you can go back to the sulfate portion of this video where I break down all the different sulfates, but that is just like incorrect information. Sulfate shampoos are inherently harsher. Like, end of story. Sorry. The next one is that natural products are healthier and safer for the hair. Not necessarily. There are harmful ingredients that are natural that could cause reactions if used in a formula without proper testing. I agree with to a point. That being said, anything can cause a reaction. You should ideally do a patch test on your skin with any new products you try, because whether they're natural or not, you could have a reaction. That's just inevitable with products. Yeah, one's not inherently better or worse than the other. In my opinion, I do think you may have more sensitivities with natural ingredients if you already have sensitivities to things. But as somebody who does have a lot of skin sensitivities and uses a natural shampoo, I will say it's not the end of the world. The next myth is itchy scalp means you are using too harsh of a shampoo. Ultimately, we are not doctors and we cannot know for sure why someone's scalp is itching. Please keep in mind, medicated shampoos are formulated through science-backed research and are recommended by dermatologists for a reason. If you have an itchy scalp and Head and Shoulders from the drugstore works for that, continue using it. Shampoo is for the scalp, not the ends. If you are concerned with hair dryness, use more conditioner on your ends or other treatments that help with the look of your hair. Do not neglect your scalp over it. Above all, do not ignore your scalp issues. See a doctor if you have a chronically itchy scalp. Don't ask us what to do about it. Trust me, if you can't see a doctor, even an urgent care will do. Try medicated shampoos that are either antifungal or anti-dandruff. If those make it worse, look into what can help a dry scalp and what is safe to use on the scalp. Funny story. One time I gave myself a scalp condition from a DIY apple cider vinegar rinse. Okay. There is a lot to unpack in that, but honestly, it's just kind of like a true and false statement. That's not like, it's kind of a myth, kind of not a myth. Itchiness can be a side effect of products, but it can also be a side effect of your environment or another underlying scalp condition. The only way to really confirm whatever it is to consult with a doctor. End of story. The next one is dandruff is dry scalp. Dry scalp is just dry scalp and causes tiny white flakes with barely any oil or sebum. Dandruff appears to be larger flakes and usually happens to people with oily scalp. It is caused by a yeast-like fungus that feeds off our scalp's natural sebum. This yeast can lead to other scalp conditions, so it's important to see a doctor if you have irritation, itchiness, or really chronic scalp concerns. Neglecting the scalp can do serious damage to the hair, which is not what any of us are after since we are a sub for hair care. This is all just something to keep in mind. Please make sure you have confirmed something is not a myth when you offer it as advice. It makes everyone's life easier. So is dandruff dry scalp? Yes, that's false. Not all dry scalp is dandruff, but dry scalp can be a side effect of dandruff. As they stated, dandruff is a common scalp condition categorized by the formation of visible white or yellow flakes of skin. It is caused by the overgrowth of a yeast-like fungus, like they said. What they didn't mention is like that the Melissasia globosa, that is naturally on everyone's scalp, and just when the balance for it gets out of hand and there's an overgrowth, that is when you get dandruff. A variety of things can cause it, such as the overgrowth of the fungus, increased production of sebum on the scalp, genetics, hormonal changes, dry skin, certain hair care products, and even stress can trigger. So as I said, dry scalp can be a symptom of dandruff, but not all dry scalp is dandruff. Other symptoms include white or yellow flakes, itchy scalp, scalp irritation, and you may have redness or dryness. Once again, I will give you a low, middle, and high end recommendation. For budget friendly, I recommend the Kitsch Tea Tree and Mint Clarifying Shampoo Bar, the Verb Dandruff Shampoo as your mid-tier option, and for your luxe option, the Briogeo Scalp Revival Shampoo. Those are just some really good options. Other options for treatments could include scalp treatments that contain corticosteroids or antifungals, avoiding harsh hair care products, maintaining good scalp hygiene, your regular wash routine and drying routine, managing stress, and consult with a doctor if the symptoms worsen or do not clear up. And a last bonus myth that they included on this post was, I'm a guy and I need shampoo recommendation. Okay, what's your hair type? How long is it? Is it color treated? What are your concerns? What is your price range? Literally anyone can use any product. And that's true. I will say most guys though don't want like the vanilla scented shampoo or like the super like feminine scents. And if that is the case for you and you're watching this, you happen to be a man or male identifying. A few of my favorite recommendations that are a little more masculine scented are Kevin Murphy products, the Necessaire products, Le Labo, Oribe, or even Mr. Smith. Again, lots of more masculine scents in those product lines. So there you have it. Which myth were you the most surprised to find out was true? Still have a myth that you're not sure if it's true or not? Comment it down below and maybe I'll make a part 2 in the future. Thank you so much for joining me today and I will see you in the next one.